Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. The observation deck of Outpost Delta 7 felt like it was holding its breath, its rusted bulkheads groaning under the weight of decades of neglect. Commander Ethan, Hawk, Callahan leaned against the edge of a dusty control console, his callous fingers tracing the worn grooves of buttons long untouched. The air was thick with the smell of stale metal and something faintly sour, like old wiring gone bad. Dust motes floated lazily in the faint light seeping through cracked viewports, where the Helix Nebula pulsed in the distance, its green tendrils curling through the void like a living thing. Klythian, a human colony teetering on the edge of known space, sprawled below, its jagged skyline barely visible through a haze of ash and ionized storms. Ethan's breath fogged the viewport as he stared out at the nebula, its eerie glow casting long shadows across the room. The planet's twin suns hung low, their amber light struggling to cut through the perpetual haze. He shifted, his boots scuffing against the gritty floor, and glanced over at Vera, the Klythian operative assigned to him for this mission. She stood across the room, her violet skin catching the flicker of emergency lights, her three amber eyes narrowed as she inspected a cracked hollow panel. Her tactical suit hugged her lithe frame, its adaptive fabric shimmering faintly, though she'd loosened the collar to cope with the stifling heat of the outpost's upper levels. A faint network of bioluminescent markings pulsed along her collarbone, like stars under her skin. "Don't mess with that," Vera said, her voice sharp but tinged with the kind of exhaustion that came from hours of climbing through the outpost's collapsed stairwells. Her long, jet-black hair was pulled into a tight braid, swaying slightly as she moved. Ethan, shirtless and sweating from the trek, flashed a crooked grin. His broad shoulders glistened, muscles still tense from hauling gear through the wreckage. "Relax, Vera. This place is a graveyard. Nothing's gonna bite us." Her middle eye flicked toward him, unimpressed. "Your confidence is reckless, Commander. We're here to intercept the Shadow Cartel's signal, not poke at relics." Her Klythian accent clipped each word, precise and controlled, like she was measuring every syllable. Ethan shrugged, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. "Signal's not due for hours. Might as well see what this old heap's got left in it." His fingers lingered over a rusted switch, curiosity getting the better of him. "Ethan, don't." Vera's warning came too late. He flipped the switch, and the deck shuddered as ancient shutters screeched open, flooding the room with the nebula's pulsating green light. Ethan squinted, shielding his eyes against the glare, a half-formed curse dying on his lips. He turned to Vera, expecting a lecture, but found her frozen, her rifle slipping from her hands to clatter on the floor. Her three eyes were wide, glowing with an intensity that made his stomach lurch. "Close it," she whispered, her voice raw, almost pleading. She backed away from the viewport, her violet skin paling under the nebula's glow. Ethan frowned, thrown by the fear in her eyes, something he'd never seen in the stoic Klythian. "It's just light, Vera. What's wrong?" She pressed herself against the wall, her breathing shallow, her markings flaring brighter. "It's not just light. The Helix Nebula's radiation, it resonates. It affects my people in certain cycles." Ethan lunged for the controls, but the mechanism was stuck, gears grinding uselessly. He slammed his fist against the panel, frustration rising. "Damn it, it's jammed!" Vera slid to the floor, a low, keening sound escaping her throat. Her markings pulsed in time with her quickening breaths, like a heartbeat made visible. "Too late," she murmured, her eyes dilating until they were pools of amber fire. "It started." "What started?" Ethan dropped to his knees beside her, his voice sharp with worry. "Vera, talk to me. Are you hurt?" She laughed, a bitter, jagged sound that didn't suit her. "Not hurt. Amplified." Her skin was fever-hot under his touch, her markings humming with energy that made the air around her vibrate. "The nebula's resonance, it triggers something in Klythians. Heightened senses, emotions, instincts. It's overwhelming." Ethan's jaw tightened as he pieced it together. "Like some kind of sensory overload?" "Worse," she gasped, clutching his arm, her nails digging into his skin. "It's like every nerve is screaming. Every thought, every feeling, It's too much. Her eyes locked onto his, raw and unguarded, and he felt his pulse quicken under her gaze. I need grounding. Physical contact. It's the only way to stabilize it. He swallowed hard, the air between them charged with something he couldn't name. Her scent hit him, like rain on stone, sharp and electric, pulling at something deep in his chest. You're sure about this? We've been butting heads since day one. Vera's lips twitched in a faint, sardonic smile, but her eyes were desperate. Trust me, Hawk, you're not my first choice. But if I don't stabilize, I'll lose control completely. And we can't afford that. Ethan hesitated, his mind racing. They'd been thrown together for this mission despite their differences, his seat-of-the-pants style clashing with her calculated precision. But now, with the nebula's light bathing them in its eerie glow, he saw her not as the icy operative he'd pegged her for, but as someone vulnerable, fighting to hold herself together. Okay, he said softly, reaching for her. I've got you. His hand brushed her cheek, and a jolt shot through them both, like a circuit snapping into place. Vera's breath hitched, and she leaned into him, her markings flaring brighter as their lips met. The nebula's light poured through the open shutters, casting their entwined forms in a verdant radiance. The world narrowed to the heat of her skin, the rhythm of her pulse, the electric hum that seemed to bind them together. It wasn't just biology. It was something deeper, something that made Ethan's heart pound with a mix of fear and wonder. Dawn crept over Caritha's jagged peaks, the twin suns painting the observation deck in shades of amber and gold. Ethan stirred, his arm draped across Vera's slender form, her violet skin cool now, her markings dimmed to a soft glow. The memories of the night flooded back, the intensity of her touch, the way she'd whispered his name, the unexpected tenderness they'd found amid the chaos. Vera's amber eyes fluttered open, their usual sharpness softened by the morning light. For a moment, they just looked at each other, the weight of what had happened settling between them like dust. Then Vera sat up, pulling Ethan's discarded jacket over her shoulders. This doesn't change anything, she said, her voice firm, though her fingers lingered on the fabric. Ethan propped himself on one elbow, studying her. You sure? Felt like we crossed a line last night. Vera's gaze drifted to the nebula, its green tendrils fading as the suns rose. The resonance is over. My biology's back to normal. But her voice wavered, and Ethan caught a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. He reached out, his hand brushing hers, and felt a spark, not the overwhelming jolt of the night before, but something subtler, warmer. What was that? He asked, sitting up. She pulled her hand back, her expression guarded. A residual effect. Klythians sometimes form connections after a resonance event. Temporary. Like your human empathy, but stronger. She stood, adjusting her suit with practiced efficiency, but Ethan felt her hesitation, like she was trying to convince herself as much as him. It'll fade. He wasn't so sure. Doesn't feel temporary, he said, his voice low. Before she could respond, his comm unit beeped, sharp and insistent. He grabbed it, scanning the message, his jaw tightening. Cartel's signal is early. They're transmitting from a relay station in the southern canyon. Vera's eyes snapped to his, her professional mask sliding back into place. Then we move. Now. Ethan nodded, pulling on his gear, but he couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had started between them was only beginning. The southern canyon was a maze of jagged rock and glowing crystal deposits, their faint pulses syncing with the nebula above. Ethan and Vera moved silently along the ridgeline, their steps almost perfectly in sync despite the tension lingering between them. The resonance had left them hyper-aware of each other. Ethan could sense Vera's focus, the steady rhythm of her breathing, without even looking at her. It was like an invisible thread tying them together, and it made his skin prickle with unease and curiosity. Relay station's half a click out, Ethan whispered, crouching behind a boulder. His HUD flickered, picking up a faint energy signature in the canyon's depths. Vera's eyes scanned the terrain, her Klythian vision catching details he couldn't: heat signatures, electromagnetic disturbances. For hostiles, she murmured, her voice low. Armed with plasma lancers. They're guarding a shielded emitter. Ethan grinned, his fingers tightening around his pulse pistol. Sounds like fun. Vera shot him a look, her middle eye narrowing. Focus, Hawk. This isn't one of your bar fights. But through their strange connection, he felt a flicker of amusement beneath her stern tone, and it made him bold. Bet I can drop 2 before you get 1. He teased, already moving. They descended into the canyon, their coordination almost instinctual. Ethan felt Vera's presence in his mind, not words, but a sense of her intentions, her movements. When she signaled a flanking maneuver, he was already covering her, his shots precise as she darted between rocks. The first 2 guards fell silently, their lancers clattering to the ground. Vera took out the third with a fluid strike, her blade flashing in the nebula's light. The 4th guard raised an alarm, but Ethan tackled him into the dust before the signal could transmit. Vera secured the emitter, her fingers flying over the controls as she hacked into the cartel's encrypted signal. Got it, she said, her voice tight with focus. Coordinates, shipment schedules, buyer lists. This is bigger than we thought. Ethan dragged the unconscious guard behind a crate, his eyes scanning the canyon for reinforcements. How big? Vera's expression darkened as she decrypted the data. The Shadow Cartel's not just smuggling weapons. They're trafficking anomalies. Energy signatures that don't match any known tech. And they're targeting human colonies. Ethan's blood ran cold. Targeting us? Why? Before Vera could answer, the ground trembled, and a low hum echoed through the canyon. Ethan's HUD flickered, warning of an incoming energy surge. Vera, move! He shouted, grabbing her arm as a pulse of green light erupted from the emitter. The shockwave knocked them to the ground, the air crackling with residual energy. Ethan shielded Vera with his body, wincing as the heat seared his back. When the dust settled, Vera was staring at him, her eyes wide. You idiot, she said, but her voice was soft, almost tender. Through their connection, he felt her gratitude, mixed with something warmer, deeper. Had to keep you in one piece, he said, forcing a grin despite the pain. You're too good with that rifle to lose. She helped him to his feet, her touch lingering a moment longer than necessary. The emitter's fried, she said, inspecting the smoking wreckage. But I got enough data to trace their next move. They're shipping something to Caritha's orbital platform tonight. Ethan nodded, rolling his shoulders to ease the burn. Then we're not done yet. Let's get back and prep. Back at Delta 7, the observation deck was a wreck, shattered consoles, flickering lights, and the faint smell of scorched circuits. Vera worked at a salvage terminal, her fingers dancing over holographic keys as she analyzed the intercepted data. Ethan leaned against the wall, a stimpatch soothing the burns on his back, his eyes fixed on her. The resonance connection hadn't faded. If anything, it was stronger, a constant hum of her presence in his mind, like a song he couldn't shake. You're staring, Vera said, not looking up, her middle eye flicking toward him. Ethan chuckled, unapologetic. Can't help it. Those markings of yours are glowing again. She paused, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing faintly. It's the nebula. Residual radiation. Nothing more. But her voice lacked its usual edge, and Ethan felt a flicker of doubt through their bond. Keep telling yourself that, he said, stepping closer. But I'm starting to think you're warming up to me. Vera's lips twitched, but before she could fire back, the terminal beeped, displaying a map of Caritha's orbital platform. The cartel's moving something called a Helix core, she said, her tone shifting to business. It's not just tech, it's organic. A bioenergy matrix, possibly sentient. And it's emitting the same resonance as the nebula. Ethan's brow furrowed. Sentient? Like a living weapon? Possibly, Vera said, her eyes scanning the data. The cartel's buyers are from the Voryn Dominion, a faction that's been probing human space for years. If they get their hands on this, it could tip the balance of power in the sector. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then we stop them. Tonight. Vera met his gaze, her expression unreadable. It's not that simple. The core's energy signature, it's familiar. It's resonating with me. With us. Ethan felt it too, a faint pull, like a heartbeat echoing through their connection. You think it's tied to what happened last night? Vera hesitated, her fingers tightening around the terminal's edge. I don't know. But if the core amplifies Klythian resonance, it could destabilize me again. And you, through our connection. Ethan reached out, his hand brushing hers. The spark was there, warmer now, almost comforting. Then we face it together. Whatever it is. The orbital platform loomed above Klyth, a massive ring of steel and glass orbiting the planet like a halo. Ethan and Vera infiltrated via a maintenance shuttle, their cover as freelance traders shaky under the scrutiny of the platform's security drones. The air buzzed with the hum of machinery and the sharp tang of ionized plasma. Vera's markings glowed faintly under her hooded cloak, betraying her unease. Stay sharp, Ethan whispered, his hand resting on the concealed pulse pistol at his hip. This place is crawling with cartel muscle. Vera nodded, her eyes scanning the crowded docking bay. Through their bond, Ethan felt her alertness, her senses heightened by the nebula's distant influence. The core's in the central vault, she said, her voice low. Heavily guarded. We'll need a diversion. Ethan grinned, pulling a small EMP grenade from his belt. Diversions are my thing. Before Vera could argue, he lobbed the grenade into a power conduit. The explosion was small but effective, plunging the docking bay into darkness as alarms blared. They moved as one, their bond guiding their steps through the chaos. Ethan felt Vera's presence like a second heartbeat, her movements fluid as she disabled a guard with a silent strike. They reached the vault, a massive chamber sealed with biometric locks and guarded by a towering Voryn enforcer, its exosuit bristling with weapons. Ethan's HUD flagged the armor as prototype tech, far beyond standard cartel gear. This just got interesting, he muttered, drawing his pistol. Vera's rifle hummed to life, her markings flaring as she prepared to fire. But before they could engage, a pulse of energy rippled through the vault, and the air shimmered with green light. Ethan's vision blurred, his mind flooded with Vera's sensations, fear, determination, and something alive. The Helix core. It was calling to them, its resonance amplifying their bond until it felt like a living thing, pulsing in time with their heartbeats. The enforcer turned, its sensors locking onto them. Intruders! It growled, its voice a mechanical rasp. Ethan dove for cover as plasma bolts scorched the air, but Vera stood her ground, her rifle firing with deadly precision. Through their bond, Ethan felt her focus, her strength, and something new, a surge of power that wasn't entirely hers. The core! She gasped, her voice strained. It's syncing with us. Ethan didn't have time to process her words. He tackled the enforcer, using his strength to slam it against the vault door. The impact triggered a secondary alarm, and the vault began to unlock, its massive doors grinding open. Inside, a crystalline structure pulsed with green light, its surface etched with patterns that mirrored Vera's markings. The Helix core. Vera staggered, clutching her head as the core's resonance overwhelmed her. Ethan felt it too, a tidal wave of emotion, memory, and raw power flooding their bond. Images flashed through his mind, Klythian cities burning, human colonies reduced to ash, a war that hadn't yet happened. What the hell is this thing? He shouted, grabbing Vera's arm to steady her. It's alive, she whispered, her eyes glowing with the same green light as the core. And it knows us. Before Ethan could respond, the vault doors sealed shut behind them, trapping them inside with the core. A voice, cold, authoritative, and distinctly Voryn, cut through the static of the enforcer's comm unit. You've activated the core, human. Now you'll serve its purpose. Ethan's pulse raced as he realized they'd walked into a trap. The core's resonance was growing stronger, binding them to it, to each other, in ways he couldn't comprehend. Vera's hand found his, her grip tight. Whatever happens, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. We face it together. Ethan nodded, his resolve hardening. Damn right we do. The vault's massive doors sealed Ethan and Vera inside with a dull clang that echoed like a death knell. The Helix core pulsed in the center of the chamber, its crystalline surface alive with swirling green light, casting eerie shadows across the polished steel walls. The air thrummed with energy, thick and electric, like the moment before a storm breaks. Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears, his grip tightening on Vera's hand as the Voryn's voice crackled through the Enforcer's calm unit again, cold and mocking. You've awakened the core, human. Now its purpose begins. Ethan's eyes darted around the vault, searching for an exit, a weapon, anything. The chamber was a fortress, smooth walls, no visible controls, just the core and its relentless hum. Vera stood rigid beside him, her violet skin glowing faintly under the core's light, her bioluminescent markings pulsing in sync with it. Through their bond, he felt her fear, sharp and jagged, but also a fierce determination that steadied his own nerves. "What's it mean, its purpose?" he asked, his voice low, urgent. Vera's 3 amber eyes flicked to the core, her expression taut. The core's sentient. It's not just a power source, it's communicating. I feel it, Ethan. It's probing us. Her voice wavered, and he sensed her struggle to maintain control, the resonance from the nebula still lingering in her system, amplified by the core's presence. It's trying to sync with our bond, like it's choosing us. Choosing us for what? Ethan's hand hovered over his pulse pistol, though he knew it was useless against whatever this thing was. The core's light intensified, and a wave of images flooded his mind, Klythian temples crumbling, human ships burning in orbit, a galaxy spiraling into chaos. The visions were vivid, almost tangible, and through their bond, he felt Vera experiencing them too, her breath catching as she clutched his arm. "We need to get out of here," she said, her voice tight. "The core's not just a weapon, it's a catalyst. If the Voryn control it, they'll use it to destabilize entire systems." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. The visions felt like warnings, not just of what could happen, but of what the core might make happen if it fell into the wrong hands. He scanned the vault again, spotting a faint seam in the wall, a maintenance hatch, barely visible. "There," he said, pointing. "We can pry it open." Vera hesitated, her eyes locked on the core. "If we leave it, they'll take it. We can't let that happen." Ethan felt her resolve through their bond, a steel core beneath her fear. He grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to meet his gaze. "We're no good to anyone dead, Vera. We get out, regroup, and come back for it. Together." Her middle eye narrowed, but she nodded, a flicker of trust passing between them. They moved to the hatch, Ethan wedging his combat knife into the seam while Vera kept watch, her rifle trained on the vault doors. The core's hum grew louder, almost deafening, and Ethan felt it tugging at their bond, like a third presence weaving itself into their connection. His knife slipped, scraping his knuckles bloody, but he gritted his teeth and kept working. "Come on, you bastard," he muttered, prying at the hatch until it gave way with a groan. The hatch opened into a narrow service tunnel, its walls lined with flickering conduits that sparked in the dim light. Ethan gestured for Vera to go first, but she shook her head. "You're hurt," she said, nodding at his bloodied hand. "I'll cover you." He didn't argue. Her tone left no room for it. They crawled through the tunnel, the core's hum fading but never vanishing, a constant reminder of the trap they barely escaped. The tunnel spat them out into a maintenance bay, a chaotic sprawl of crates and machinery bathed in the platform's harsh artificial light. Alarms blared in the distance, and Ethan could hear the clatter of boots, cartel reinforcements closing in. He pulled Vera behind a stack of cargo containers, their bond buzzing with shared adrenaline. "We need a ship," he whispered, scanning the bay. "Something fast." Vera's eyes flicked to a sleek, unmarked shuttle docked at the far end. "That's Voryn tech," she said, her voice low. "Fast, but it'll have trackers. We'll need to disable them." Ethan grinned, despite the situation. "You hack, I'll cover. Deal?" She shot him a look, her markings pulsing faintly. "Don't get cocky, Hawk." But through their bond, he felt a spark of amusement, and it fueled his resolve. They moved toward the shuttle, staying low. Ethan's HUD picked up heat signatures, 6 cartel guards fanning out across the bay. Vera's rifle hummed as she took position behind a crate, her movements fluid, almost dance-like. Ethan felt her focus through their bond, a steady pulse that kept him grounded. He fired first, dropping a guard with a precise shot to the chest. Vera followed, her rifle's plasma bolts cutting through the air with lethal accuracy. The remaining guards returned fire, plasma scorching the crates around them. Ethan dove for cover, feeling Vera's warning through their bond a split second before a bolt grazed his shoulder. "On your left," she called, her voice sharp as she took out another guard. Ethan rolled, firing blindly, and felt her approval as his shot connected. Their coordination was uncanny, each anticipating the other's moves without a word. They reached the shuttle, Vera sliding into the pilot's seat while Ethan stood guard at the hatch. Her fingers flew over the controls, her markings glowing brighter as she worked. "Trackers are embedded in the nav system," she said, her voice tight with concentration. "Give me a minute." Ethan glanced back at the bay, where more guards were pouring in. "We don't have a minute." He lobbed another EMP grenade, the pulse disabling the guards' weapons for a precious few seconds. Vera cursed under her breath, a rare crack in her composure, and Ethan felt her frustration through their bond. "Got it," she said finally, the shuttle's engines roaring to life. "Get in." Ethan dove inside as the hatch sealed, and the shuttle lurched forward, blasting out of the bay just as the guards opened fire again. The shuttle streaked through Caritha's orbit, the planet's twin suns glinting off its hull. Ethan slumped in the co-pilot's seat, wincing as he pressed a stim patch to his shoulder. Vera's hands were steady on the controls, but her markings pulsed erratically, betraying her unease. "The core's still affecting us," she said, her voice low. "I can feel it, even from here." Ethan nodded, rubbing his temple as the core's visions lingered in his mind, burning cities, shattered fleets, a war that felt all too real. Those images, they weren't just random, were they? Vera's middle eye flicked toward him, her expression guarded. "No. The core's sentient. It's showing us something, maybe a warning, maybe a prophecy. Klythian lore speaks of entities like this, born from the nebula's heart, meant to bridge worlds or destroy them." "Great," Ethan muttered, leaning back. "So we're bonded to a cosmic doomsday device." Vera's lips twitched, a faint smile breaking through her tension. "You humans always have a way of making things sound dramatic." He chuckled, the sound easing the knot in his chest. "Comes with the territory. So, what's our next move?" Vera pulled up the intercepted data on the shuttle's holodisplay, a map of the sector glowing in the air between them. "The cartel's shipping the core to a Voryn outpost on Nexera, a moon in the outer system. If we can intercept it there, we might stop them before they weaponize it." Ethan studied the map, his mind already working through the logistics. "Nexera's a fortress. We'll need backup, gear, maybe a miracle." "We don't have time for miracles," Vera said, her voice firm. "But we have the data, and each other." She glanced at him, and through their bond, he felt a flicker of something new, trust, maybe even hope. It was enough to make him sit up straighter, his resolve hardening. "Then let's make it count." Nexera loomed ahead, a barren moon pocked with craters and Voryn fortifications. The shuttle stealth systems kept them off the radar, but Ethan's gut told him they were walking into another trap. The core's resonance lingered in their bond, a constant hum that made his skin prickle. Vera's markings glowed faintly, even in the dim cockpit, and he could feel her fighting to keep the resonance at bay. They landed in a shadowed canyon, the shuttle's hull blending with the moon's rocky terrain. Ethan checked his gear, pulse pistol, combat knife, and a few EMP grenades, all standard issue but feeling woefully inadequate. Vera slung her rifle over her shoulder, her movements precise but tinged with a fatigue he could sense through their bond. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer than he intended. She hesitated, her middle eye meeting his. "The core's pull is stronger here. It's calling to me." Her hand brushed her chest, where her markings pulsed brighter. "I don't know how long I can resist it." Ethan reached out, his hand resting on her arm. The spark was there, warm and steady, grounding them both. You don't have to resist alone. We're in this together. Her lips parted, as if to argue, but she nodded instead, a rare vulnerability in her eyes. Thank you, Ethan. The words were quiet, almost lost in the hum of the shuttle, but they hit him like a punch. He squeezed her arm gently, then turned to the hatch. Let's go steal a cosmic weapon. The Voryn outpost was a labyrinth of steel and stone, its corridors lit by harsh blue lights that cast long shadows. Ethan and Vera moved silently, their bond guiding them through the maze. The core's resonance grew stronger with every step, a rhythmic pulse that seemed to sync with their heartbeats. Ethan felt Vera's tension through their connection, her senses stretched thin as she scanned for threats. They reached a central chamber, where the core sat on a pedestal, surrounded by Voryn scientists in exosuits, their four-fingered hands manipulating holographic controls. The core's light was blinding now, its patterns shifting like a living language. Ethan crouched behind a console, his pulse racing. That's it, he whispered. But how do we get it out? Vera's eyes were fixed on the core, her markings glowing in sync with its pulses. We don't. Not yet. We need to know what they're doing with it. Before Ethan could argue, she slipped forward, her movements a blur as she hacked into a nearby terminal. Ethan covered her, his pistol trained on the scientists, who hadn't noticed them yet. Through their bond, he felt her focus, her mind racing as she pulled data from the system. They're trying to weaponize it, she whispered, her voice tight. The core's energy can destabilize entire planets, rewrite neural networks, even control minds. The Voryn want to use it to subjugate human colonies first, then the rest of the galaxy. Ethan's blood ran cold. And the visions? Are they part of this? Vera nodded, her markings flaring. The core's showing us what it could do, what it will do if we don't stop them. But there's more. It's bonded to us, Ethan. It's using our connection to amplify itself. He stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. So we're not just fighting for the core. We're fighting to keep it from controlling us. Before she could respond, a Voryn scientist turned, his sensors locking onto them. Intruders! He hissed, his voice a grating buzz. Alarms blared, and the chamber erupted into chaos. Ethan fired, dropping the scientist, but more Voryn poured in, their exosuits bristling with weapons. Vera's rifle sang, her shots precise, but Ethan felt her strain through their bond, the core's resonance pushing her to the edge. They fought back to back, their movements perfectly synchronized. Ethan felt Vera's intentions before she acted, covering her as she flanked a group of guards. The core's hum grew deafening, and Ethan's vision blurred with new images, humanity rising against the Voryn, Klythian warriors joining them, a future where their bond could change everything. Stay with me, Vera! He shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. She nodded, her markings blazing as she fired. I'm here. But her voice was strained, and Ethan felt the core's pull on her, like a tide dragging her under. He grabbed her arm, the spark of their bond grounding her, and they pushed forward, cutting a path toward the core. The scientists were retreating now, leaving the chamber in disarray. As they reached the pedestal, the core's light flared, and a figure stepped from the shadows, a Voryn commander, his exosuit adorned with glowing runes. You cannot stop the inevitable, he said, his voice resonating with the core's hum. The Helix chose you, but it belongs to us. He raised a weapon, its barrel glowing with green energy. Ethan dove, tackling Vera to the ground as the blast scorched the air above them. The core's resonance surged, and Ethan felt it flood their bond, amplifying their senses, their strength. Vera gasped, her markings glowing so brightly they lit the chamber. It's helping us, she said, her voice awed. The core, it's fighting with us. Ethan didn't question it. He rolled to his feet, firing at the commander, who staggered but didn't fall. Vera joined him, her rifle's plasma bolts tearing through the commander's armor. Together they moved like a single entity, their bond and the core's energy weaving them into something more. The commander fell, his weapon clattering to the ground, and the remaining Voryn fled. But the victory was short-lived. The core's light pulsed wildly, And Ethan felt a new presence in their bond, not just Vera, not just the core, but something else, something ancient and vast. Vera clutched her head, her markings flickering. "It's too much," she whispered. "It's speaking to me." Ethan grabbed her shoulders, his voice urgent. "Fight it, Vera. You're stronger than this." Through their bond, he poured his own resolve into her, a steady anchor against the core's tide. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, he saw not just the warrior, but the woman who trusted him in the outpost, who'd let him see her vulnerability. "Together," she said, her voice steadying. The core's hum softened, its light stabilizing, but the chambers shook as Voryn reinforcements arrived. Ethan and Vera exchanged a glance, their bond humming with shared determination. "We can't take it with us," Ethan said, his voice grim. "Not yet." Vera nodded, her fingers flying over the pedestal's controls. "I'm locking it down. It'll buy us time." They ran, the core's resonance fading but never vanishing, a constant reminder of the stakes. As they reached the shuttle, Ethan felt a new vision, humanity and Klythian standing together, the core's light guiding them, not destroying them. He didn't know if it was a promise or a warning, but he knew one thing: they couldn't let the Voryn win. Back on the shuttle, Ethan slumped in the co-pilot's seat, his shoulder throbbing, his mind reeling. Vera piloted them away from Nexera, her hands steady but her markings still glowing faintly. "We stopped them for now," she said, her voice quiet. "But they'll come for the core again. And us." Ethan nodded, rubbing his temple. "Then we need a plan. A real one." He looked at her, feeling their bond stronger than ever, a lifeline in the chaos. "And we need to figure out what this thing between us is. Because it's not just the core, Vera. It's you and me." She didn't answer right away, her eyes fixed on the stars ahead. But through their bond, he felt a warmth, a flicker of hope that hadn't been there before. "Maybe," she said finally, her voice soft. "But first we fight." Ethan grinned, leaning back. "That's my kind of plan." The shuttle streaked through the void, its engines humming as it left Nexera's barren surface behind. Ethan Callahan slumped in the co-pilot's seat, his shoulders still stinging from the plasma graze, his mind buzzing with the Helix core's lingering visions. Human colonies burning, Klythian cities reduced to ash, a galaxy spiraling into war. Through their bond, he felt Vera's presence beside him, her violet skin faintly glowing under the cockpit's dim lights, her bioluminescent markings pulsing in time with her steady breaths. She piloted with her usual precision, but Ethan could sense her exhaustion, a bone-deep weariness mirrored by the faint tremor in her hands. "We bought time," Vera said, her voice quiet but firm, her 3 amber eyes fixed on the starfield ahead. "But the Voryn won't stop. The core's too valuable." Ethan nodded, rubbing his temple where the core's resonance still echoed, a low hum that felt like a heartbeat not his own. "Then we take the fight to them. Find their main base, destroy the core before they can weaponize it." Vera's middle eye flicked toward him, her expression unreadable. "It's not that simple, Ethan. The core's sentient. Destroying it might be like killing a living thing. And it's bonded to us, destroying it could." She trailed off, her hand brushing her chest where her markings glowed brighter. Ethan felt her hesitation through their bond, a mix of fear and something deeper, something that felt like loyalty to the strange entity they'd encountered. "Could what?" he pressed, leaning forward. "You said it's trying to control us. We can't let that happen." Vera's lips tightened, and for a moment, he thought she'd shut him out. But then she met his gaze, her eyes softening. "It's not control. It's connection. The core's showing us what could happen, war, destruction, but also what could be. A future where humans and Klythians stand together. It's chosen us to make that choice." Ethan let out a low whistle, leaning back. No pressure then. He flashed a grin, but it didn't reach his eyes. The visions had shaken him more than he'd admit. Images of his home colony, New Tacoma, reduced to rubble, of Vera fighting alone against a tide of Voryn enforcers. But beneath the fear was a spark of defiance, a human stubbornness that refused to let those visions become reality. "So, what's the plan?" We can't just waltz into a Voryn stronghold and ask for the core back. Vera pulled up the intercepted data on the shuttle's holodisplay, a map of the sector glowing in the air between them. The Voryn's main base is on Valthera, a gas giant's moon in the outer rim. It's heavily fortified, but the data we pulled from Nixera gives us entry codes and patrol schedules. If we can infiltrate their command center, we can access the core's containment system and decide what to do with it. Ethan studied the map, his mind already working through the logistics. Sounds like a suicide run. He glanced at her, his grin returning. Good thing I'm bad at dying. Vera's lips twitched, a rare smile breaking through her tension. You humans and your reckless optimism. It's infuriating. But through their bond, he felt a warmth, a flicker of affection that made his chest tighten. Then let's make it count, he said, his voice low. Together. Vera nodded, her markings glowing brighter, and for a moment, the cockpit felt smaller, the air charged with something unspoken. Their bond hummed between them, a lifeline in the face of what lay ahead. Valthera's surface was a frozen wasteland, its icy plains reflecting the gas giant's swirling reds and golds. The Voryn stronghold loomed like a scar against the horizon, a fortress of black steel and glowing conduits that pulsed with the same green light as the Helix core. Ethan and Vera approached under the cover of a blizzard, their shuttle stealth systems masking their approach. The cold bit at Ethan's exposed skin, his breath fogging in the frigid air, but Vera seemed unfazed, her Klythian physiology adapted to harsher climates. Her markings glowed faintly under her tactical suit, a beacon in the storm. They crouched behind an ice ridge, the stronghold's perimeter lights cutting through the snow. Ethan's HUD flagged multiple heat signatures, Voryn patrols, drones, and automated turrets. This place is locked down tighter than a corporate vault, he muttered, checking his pulse pistol. Any bright ideas? Vera's eyes scanned the terrain, her vision cutting through the blizzard. The data suggests a maintenance shaft on the eastern wall. It's lightly guarded but narrow. We'll need to move fast. Ethan felt her focus through their bond, a steady pulse that kept him grounded. Lead the way, he said, falling into step behind her. The maintenance shaft was a claustrophobic tunnel, its walls slick with ice and humming with energy conduits. Ethan's shoulders brushed the walls as he followed Vera, her rifle held ready. The core's resonance grew stronger with every step, a rhythmic pulse that synced with their bond, making Ethan's skin prickle. He could feel Vera's strain, her markings glowing brighter as the core's presence tugged at her. You holding up? He whispered, his voice echoing in the tight space. Vera didn't turn, but her voice was tight. It's loud. The core's calling to me, Ethan. It wants us to find it. He reached out, his hand brushing her shoulder, and the spark of their bond steadied her, if only for a moment. We'll get to it, he said. And we'll figure this out. Together. The shaft opened into a vast chamber, the heart of the Voryn stronghold. The Helix core sat on a raised platform, its crystalline surface blazing with green light, surrounded by Voryn scientists and enforcers in exosuits. Above it, a massive holodisplay showed simulations of planetary destruction, neural reprogramming, and fleets falling under the core's influence. Ethan's stomach churned as he realized the scale of the Voryn's plans. Vera crouched beside him, her rifle trained on the chamber. They're calibrating it, she whispered, her voice barely audible. If they finish, the core could control entire systems. Ethan felt her fear through their bond, but also her resolve, a steel core that matched his own. Then we stop them, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Now. They moved as one, their bond guiding their steps with preternatural precision. Ethan lobbed an EMP grenade, disabling the chamber's turrets, while Vera fired, her plasma bolts cutting through the scientists' exosuits. The enforcers returned fire, their weapons blazing with green energy, but Ethan and Vera were a blur, their movements synchronized through their bond. Ethan felt Vera's intentions before she acted, covering her as she flanked a group of guards, her rifle singing with deadly accuracy. The core's resonance surged, flooding their bond with power. Ethan's senses sharpened, his reflexes faster than humanly possible, and he felt Vera's strength flowing through him, amplified by the core. They fought like a single entity, each anticipating the other's moves, their bond a living thing that made them more than the sum of their parts. But the core's pull was relentless, and Ethan saw Vera's markings flare brighter, her breaths coming in sharp gasps. "Stay with me," he called, his voice cutting through the chaos. She nodded, her eyes glowing with the core's light, and fired another shot, dropping an enforcer. But the chamber shook, and a new figure emerged from the shadows, a Voryn warlord, his exosuit towering over the others, its surface etched with runes that pulsed in sync with the core. "You cannot stop the Helix," the warlord said, his voice a deep rumble that echoed through the chamber. "It has chosen you, but it serves us." He raised a massive weapon, its barrel glowing with green energy, and Ethan felt a spike of fear through their bond, not his, but Vera's. The core's resonance was overwhelming her, pulling her toward it like a tide. Ethan dove, tackling Vera out of the weapon's path as the blast scorched the air. They hit the ground hard, and he shielded her with his body, his pulse racing. "Vera, look at me," he said, his voice urgent. "You're stronger than this. We're stronger." Through their bond, he poured his resolve into her, a steady anchor against the core's pull. Her eyes met his, and for a moment he saw the woman who'd trusted him in the outpost, who'd let him see her heart. "Together," she whispered, her voice steadying. She pushed herself up, her rifle blazing, and Ethan joined her, their bond flaring with power. The core's light pulsed wildly, and Ethan felt a new presence in their connection, not just Vera, not just the core, but something ancient, something that felt like hope. The warlord advanced, his weapon charging again, but Ethan and Vera moved as one, their attacks perfectly coordinated. Vera's shots weakened the warlord's armor, and Ethan closed the distance, slamming his combat knife into a seam in the exosuit. The warlord staggered, but before he could recover, the core's resonance surged, and a wave of green light erupted from its surface. The chamber shook, and Ethan felt the core's power flood their bond, amplifying their strength, their senses, their connection. The warlord fell, his weapon clattering to the ground, and the remaining Voryn fled, their exosuits sparking in the core's light. Ethan and Vera stood panting, their bond humming with shared triumph, but the core's resonance didn't fade. It grew stronger, its light enveloping them, and Ethan felt it speaking, not in words, but in emotions, in visions of a future where humans and Klythians stood together, united against the darkness. "We can't destroy it," Vera said, her voice awed as she stared at the core. "It's not a weapon, it's a bridge. It wants to connect us, not control us." Ethan nodded, his hand finding hers. The spark of their bond was warm, steady, a lifeline in the chaos. "Then we take it with us," he said. "We keep it safe, figure out what it's trying to tell us." Vera hesitated, her markings glowing softly. "The Voryn will come for it. For us." Ethan grinned, his human defiance shining through. "Let them try. We've got each other, and this thing." He gestured at the core, its light pulsing in time with their bond. Vera's lips curved in a rare smile, and through their bond he felt her hope, her trust, her belief in what they could do together. They escaped the stronghold with the core in tow, its containment units secured in the shuttle's cargo hold. The Voryn's defenses were in disarray, their systems fried by the core's final pulse, and Ethan piloted them out of Valthora's orbit, the gas giant's swirling colors fading behind them. Vera sat beside him, her markings dimmed but still glowing, her eyes fixed on the stars. Through their bond, Ethan felt her calm, a quiet strength that mirrored his own. "We need a safe place to hide this thing," he said, his voice low. "Somewhere the Voryn can't find it." Vera nodded, pulling up a star chart on the holo display. "There's a neutral colony, Haven's Reach, on the edge of the sector. It's a sanctuary for interspecies alliances, off the Voryn's radar. We can regroup there, study the core." Ethan studied the chart, his mind already working through the next steps. "Sounds like a plan. But we're gonna need allies. The Voryn won't give up, and if the core's as powerful as you say, others will come for it too." Vera's middle eye met his, and he felt a flicker of her resolve, tinged with something softer. "We'll find them. Humans, Klythians, maybe others. The core's vision showed us what's possible. Ethan leaned back, a grin spreading across his face. You're starting to sound like me, Vera. All optimistic and reckless. She rolled her eyes, but her smile widened, and through their bond, he felt a warmth that made his heart skip. Don't get used to it, Hawk, she said, but her voice was soft, teasing. The shuttle dropped out of hyperspace near Haven's Reach, a small station orbiting a lush, green planet. The station was a patchwork of human and alien designs, its halls filled with traders, refugees, and dreamers from across the galaxy. Ethan and Vera docked, carrying the core's containment unit between them, its light muted but still pulsing faintly. The station's commander, a grizzled human named Mara, met them at the airlock, her eyes narrowing as she took in Vera's markings and Ethan's battered gear. You're bringing trouble to my doorstep, Mara said, her voice gruff but not unkind. That thing's got Voryn written all over it. Ethan flashed a grin, his charm undimmed. Trouble's my specialty, Commander. But we're here to keep this out of the wrong hands. You in? Mara studied them, then nodded. Haven's Reach stands for second chances. You've got a place here, for now. But you'd better have a damn good plan. Vera stepped forward, her voice steady. We do. The core's not just a weapon, it's a chance to unite our people. Humans, Klythians, anyone who'll stand with us. Mara raised an eyebrow, but Ethan felt her interest through the bond, a spark of hope that mirrored Vera's. All right, Mara said. Let's see what you've got. Months later, Ethan stood on Haven's Reach's observation deck, the planet's green surface glowing below, the Helix Nebula a faint shimmer in the distance. The core sat in a secure lab, its lights studied by a team of human and Klythian scientists, its visions guiding their work. The station had become a beacon, drawing allies from across the sector, humans, Klythians, even a few defectors from other species, all united by the core's promise of a better future. Vera stood beside him, her violet skin catching the starlight, her markings glowing softly. Their bond had grown stronger, a constant hum of connection that felt as natural as breathing. You're staring again, she said, her voice teasing, her middle eye flicking toward him. Ethan grinned, unapologetic. Can't help it. You're glowing. She rolled her eyes, but her smile was warm, and through their bond, he felt her affection, a quiet joy that had taken root over the months. The core's changing things, she said, her gaze drifting to the nebula. It's showing us how to work together, how to build something new. I used to think connection was a weakness. Now I see it's our strength. Ethan took her hand, the spark of their bond warm and steady. Sounds like you're going soft on me, Vera. She laughed, a sound that lit up the deck, and leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder. Don't get used to it, Hawk. They stood in silence, the stars stretching out before them, the core's light a faint pulse in the distance. It had started with a reckless flip of a switch, a moment of chaos under the nebula's glow, but it had led them here, to a partnership, a purpose, a future neither could have imagined. The core's visions had shown them war, but also hope, and Ethan knew they'd fight for that hope, together. Above them, a mobile hung in the observation deck's nursery, a gift from the station's engineers, a delicate array of stars and planets, with a crystalline helix at its center, glowing faintly green. It was a reminder of how it all began, of a human and a Klythian who'd found each other in the chaos, and of the bridge they were building, not just for themselves, but for a galaxy ready to change.